Alright, hey there guys, just thought I'd make a quick video about top tier SPAA use and everything like that, as well as CAS and some other stuff. So, first off, we want to sort of go over some basic stuff. So your average SPAA player, say they're just chilling right here, right? They'll have their radar on the default setting, which goes out to about 6 miles, 10 kilometers-ish. So the way that radar works is it has both an elevation and a scan angle. Now the horizontal scan angle will always be 360 degrees for most of the top tier SPAA, but the vertical one will vary slightly. It goes from probably around 30 to 16 degrees ish. So basically what that looks like is you have your radar coming out in a cone like this. And if you put the ground right here, you can see that, radar goes into the ground. A lot of planes, except for on one map that I could think of in top tier, will spawn like here, so slightly outside of the range of your default radar setting. And they'll either do one of three things usually. So if they're heading in, they'll either head straight into the battlefield like this, they'll dive and hug the ground, or they'll climb over the radar. And this is a lot rarer for them to do, for them to climb up and over. A lot of the times they'll go down. Now, as an SPAA player, what this basically means is if you're just looking at your radar and plane spawns, it's going to take a bit for you to see them at first, and if they're going straight at you, then you'll pick them up. If they're going down along the ground, you'll probably pick them up unless there's like some ground clutter or something like that, but there's a pretty decent chance you'll see them on the radar for at least a second, so you'll know that they're there. However, the player that climbs up and above, you're not going to be able to see them if you're just paying attention to your radar. So this is good for CAS players, because if CAS players climb, they will avoid the attention of 90% of the top tier SPAA players out there. And it's bad for SPAA because if there's a CAS player who isn't just hugging the ground or flying straight in, good chance they won't see him. And if people are going this high, it usually means they have things like Mavericks or KH-25 MLs or whatever, smart munitions. So what can you do? So as an SPAA player, what you need to do the instant you spawn in is increase the search range of your radar. Now, sometimes it won't increase the lock range, but basically what this means is, say if you increase the range once on the Tungus, the 2S6, your search range will go from 6 miles from when things will starting to show up to 12 miles. So that'll put you like out here. And so you'll be able to see planes the instant they spawn in. Now, the way Warthunder's rendering system works, it won't be very obvious. Like if you try to acquire them visually, it'll be very, very hard to see them because a lot of the times the plane's model won't even render in because the Gaijin decided to change the rendering system to be dumb. And if they end up flying over your radar and you lose visual on them, it's going to be very, very, very hard for you to pick them up again. So, let's see some strategies here for playing as both CAS and SPAA. Alright, first thing I'd like you guys to notice is how hard it is to see the plane. In fact, you can only see his exhaust, but barely. Turning on thermals makes it quite a bit more obvious, but some AA don't have very good thermals or not thermals at all. So just keep in mind that regaining visual contact of an aircraft, if you lose it, is very difficult. This guy decides to fly straight in, easy missile kill. And the best way to aim missiles of any kind is, as the target is moving, make sure your missile is directly on the target. Don't have the missile fly in front of the target or behind the target at all. The missile should, even in some cases, partially obscure what you're shooting at in your field of view. Now here we have an example of someone who decides to fly low, and I'd like you guys to all take note of how this works out for him. So he goes behind the mountain here, masked from my radar. So I can't really see him. I'm just waiting to see if he pops back up over the mountain or continues to fly to the side. You can see he's going in there. I don't have time to shoot a missile at him. So he is safe for the most part, but he's also useless to his team. He's not accomplishing anything. He's just flying low, not dealing with the battlefield, not a threat. I'm just keeping my eye on him because I got nothing better to do. You can see here he gets really close here. I'm gonna see if I can line up guns, but there's the rocks there, and he hits him. There you go, dead plane. Now here's an interesting thing I'd like to point out. So here I'm using the ADATS, and you can see that triangle cursor on the top of my screen appears before the radar contact on my scope. And that's the case for all radars, because radars will actually see farther than your scope will show that they can see. But your scope just won't show it. And so you can use those triangles to kind of see things if you're kind of looking at them. To know if your radars can see them at least. But as you can see there, I used the Y menu to quickly just punch my radar out a bit farther since I didn't have it quite far enough. It's Y18, I think, is the quickest way to do that. Here's another example of why you shouldn't fly low. It's flying low, doesn't make them really any harder to kill, easy gun kill. A bit later on in this clip, I'm just sort of looking around, and I see another contact on my radar scope. Switch over to him, and he's a bit far right now, so I'm waiting for him to get into a point where I can lock him. You can see I have the thermals on so I can see him better.
We need to put more pressure on the enemy. They're winning.
You're here to lock, fire the missile. You can see I'm not really leading the missile too much. I'm trying to keep the missile on the plane as much as possible. Leading the cursor, or the crosshair, as much as however needed to do that. And easy kill. Alright, different game here. So yeah, I spawn in my Tungus here after it dies. It's just a quick life. But the first thing that I do is I hit that Y18, punch my radar out even farther, even though in this clip it doesn't really even matter. Because helicopter right there, I shoot at him a bit because sometimes helicopters don't really die very well, especially the Ka-50s and such, and spawn camped. Alright, going into the MiG-27K. The good thing about the MiG-27K is it has a targeting pod, and this is very important. You can see the very first thing I do, as soon as I spawn in, is I go in about a 50-degree or higher climb. I'm not even spaded in this thing yet, it's just what it can do. And since it has a targeting pod, as I'm climbing, I'm using it to look around and look for targets. Now I know there are people by our spawn, so I'm checking over there. And I can also see the occasional mark by our allies on the map. You can also notice at this point that they start capturing the C point, but I'm still more concerned about looking around where our spawn is because I want to get rid of the spawn campers as fast as possible. Now, one thing interesting to point out about that clip is you can see when I hit the track or the sight stabilization on that target, the box didn't appear around the target, but the target then moved into the box. That's because the way warthunder renders things, the things you're looking at on the ground won't actually always be there. In fact, it's very annoying because a lot of times they'll phase into the ground. So I decided to retarget towards the C point. There's a lot of targets there. I shoot one KH-25mm, wait a little bit, shoot a second one because I'm going to try to kill as many things as possible with this one attack. You can see the first missile going in there. That's one death. And here's another example of what I was talking about earlier. Right on him, hit, because he's actually down there. He wasn't where I thought he was. So thank you, Epic Warthunder rendering system, very cool. And as I'm climbing up and out, because after you launch the missiles, since you use a targeting pod, you can just continue to climb again. I'm looking for more targets. I'm observing the battlefield and seeing if there's what I'm going to go for next. And you can see my RWR gives me the notification that I've been pinged by a radar. And that usually means one thing, and that there's a plane in the air. A lot of the times enemies will spawn planes, especially if there's a phantom. There you go, I'm being locked up. So I know it's a plane now. I can see him over there. He's just fired a probably heat seeker at me because aim sims really don't like to lock in rear aspect. And I prepare to dogfight this dude. Pre-flaring just in case, because I don't want him to get a head-on aim 7 on me. Go vertical, turn on the manual wing sweep. I'm in a very advantageous position here. It's very, very low energy since he had to climb for me, and I was already up as high as I was. Get some nice lead, and easy gun kill. Put the wings back into auto mode because there's no reason to have them manually swept forward all the time. And turn back into the battlefield. Notice how I don't point my nose directly at the battlefield. This is more of a quirk of the MiG-27K, and that its targeting pod can't look above the nose at all. So when you're first starting to use it, sometimes you'll notice that you lose lock on something when you're pointing directly at it, and that's because the nose obscures the targeting pod. So there I fire the missile, immediately start climbing again. And easy kill. On to this next clip, different map, bit earlier in the match too. You can see again immediately climbing at over 50 degrees to get out of the range of radars, because even if people have their radars punched out as an SPAA, they won't see you for very long if you climb super aggressively, which is why as an SPAA player you have to be constantly vigilant, even if the gameplay can be incredibly boring when the enemy isn't spawning anything. So here I am looking for targets, see what I can shoot at. Nose over, make sure not to roll so I don't obscure the targeting pod and lose the track on the target.
Attention to the map.
Now, I'm not sure if my friendly there is going to kill him, and I don't want to waste my missile. So I was looking around for another target, decide that it's probably just a good idea to fire at him anyways. Shoot the missile, immediately start climbing again. And easy kill. So there's a target there. Again, you can see the slight desync or whatever in where the target is versus where you lock the target. Now, here, instead of turning around right away, I'm gaining some distance and separation from the battlefield. That way, when I do my turn, I have both enough time to employ my weapons properly and enough altitude to stay out of range of SPAA. Again, notice that as I'm flying, even though I'm not engaging anything right now, I'm looking for targets, and I spot an ADATS by the church behind their spawn. And that's immediately my priority target because I want to get rid of SPAA as much as possible. You can see I'm very, very high, very far from the battlefield. Exactly where you want to be on the start of your attack run. So find him again. Get a track. See that there's a plane that just spawned, but I'm not super worried about it right now. Friendlies were calling out the ADATS. I was letting him know that I shot at it. Checking my 6 for any missiles in case that plane decided to nose up at me. But given that the radar pings have stopped, I'm pretty sure he ignored me. Or didn't really even see me to begin with. There we go, ADATS down.
Attention to the map.
can launch multiple missiles in a single pass to make things go a bit quicker, but I've had limited success with doing that. It only works in certain circumstances where the targets you're shooting at are close enough together for that to work. And here I noticed that my allies from earlier have kind of died over in that location, and this guy's getting pushed pretty hard, so I want to help him out. He seems pretty focused on the guy that's directly in front of him, so I'm going to go for the flanker. You can notice that as I'm trying to lock this leopard, I think it is, the lock keeps on shifting over to tank carcasses, so I decided to manually guide it in instead. There you go, helping a friendly out. He cleans up that last guy eventually. By the time I turn around, there's one more. So I'm on one missile. I decide that I'm just going to speed things up a bit. So instead of doing a vertical turn, I do a vertical turn in the downwards direction instead of upwards direction. It's a bit faster that way, but you lose a lot more altitude. So I generally don't do that. There's a Thorac up, shoot a missile at him, and I turn on my cannon CCIP so I can gun the last guy on that hill. Wait for the missile to successfully guide itself in. I don't want to have any chance of that fucking up. Kill the Thorac. Mag dump this dude. Only get a crit, unfortunately. But by the time I land and get up again, game's already over. So what are some key takeaways from this? So as SPAA, the first thing you should do when you spawn in at top tier is increase the range of your radar so you can see planes when they're spawning. You have to be vigilant so you can make sure to look at them as they're climbing, so if they go over your radar, you don't lose sight of them and then die. A lot of the targets that I end up killing as CAS do end up being enemy SPAA, because they are oblivious and they don't look up. As CAS, you don't want to fly low. Flying low reduces your ability to employ your weapons, makes you hard to target for SPAA, sure, but you're also kind of useless at the same time. So you're wasting your spawn and not really helping your team. You don't want to fly straight in because that just makes you an easy kill. What you want to do is immediately start hard climbing up. Now, if people start becoming a lot more conscious of the fact that people just go up and the ability that they have to punch out their radars, this might become a lot harder to do. But at the same time, with Gaijin's recent nerfs to missile maneuverability, very few AA will be able to effectively hit you at your maximum altitude, especially for weapon employment, because at 10 kilometers, which is the ADATS max missile range, or about 30,000 feet, it really loses a lot of energy and just can't lead planes anymore. Same goes for a lot of missiles, except for probably the Roland, the VT-1 on the Roland systems. I hope this video helped you guys, and good luck out there.